It is common to think that blood is blue when it is inside your body and red when it comes into contact with oxygen in the air. That is why when you get a paper cut, the blood that was blue when contained within your veins suddenly turns red, right? Wrong. If your blood is ever really blue, then you have a big problem. Your blood is always red. But then the question is, why do we see blue when we look at our veins? All of the colors we see are imagined as waves of light. Each color may either be absorbed or reflected by certain objects depending on the length of its waves. Shorter wavelengths, those closer to 400 nanometers, are higher in energy, and longer wavelengths, those closer to 700 nanometers, are lower in energy. For example, if we look at why plants are green, we find that they absorb blue light, and they absorb red light, but they reflect green light. The same explanation applies to the color of our veins. Blue light is not absorbed, and is therefore reflected, making the blood in our veins appear blue. Okay, so blood definitely isn't blue, but what makes it red? And is that oxygen from the myth even involved in the color? To understand this, we must look deeper into the chemistry of blood. Our blood consists of red blood cells. Each red blood cell contains a protein molecule called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin has 4 subunits, that is, smaller parts, and each of these smaller parts contains a heme group. This heme group may seem pretty complicated, but the main point is the iron, represented by the symbol Fe in the center. In the heme molecule, iron is part of what is called a metal coordination complex. This complex has 6 binding sites, 5 of which are occupied. Note that the histine group has been left out of this image for the sake of simplicity. The 6th binding site is reserved for oxygen. Oxygen really likes iron and will bind to it whenever they are both present. This oxygen binds to the iron, resulting in a small change in the shape of the heme molecule. This tiny shape change may not seem very important, but it is. This difference in geometry between the deoxygenated and the oxygenated heme group is what causes variations in the color of our blood in different parts of our body. The deoxygenated form is pseudo-square pyramidal, which has the electron orbital splitting diagram on the left. The oxygenated form is octahedral and has the electron splitting diagram on the right. These names may seem intimidating, but the point is that in the diagram on the left, the electron only has to go up one level of a ladder, while in the diagram on the right, the electron has to jump to the very top from the very bottom. Therefore, the electron on the right needs more energy. Higher energy light, as was mentioned earlier, has a shorter wavelength, so oxygenated heme absorbs green and deoxygenated heme absorbs lower energy yellow-green light. As a result, oxygenated blood reflects a bright red color, which is complementary to the green it absorbs, and deoxygenated blood reflects a dark purple color, which is complementary to the yellow-green light it absorbs. Now let's take a look at where our blood is oxygenated and where it is deoxygenated. Oxygen is abundant in the lungs, and so this is where oxygen binds to the iron. This oxygenated blood returns to the heart and is pumped to the rest of the body where oxygen levels are lower. Oxygen is released in these regions of the body, for example in muscles, and the shape of the heme molecule returns to its deoxygenated conformation. Deoxygenated blood then returns to the heart via veins, and the circulatory cycle repeats. You might wonder why oxygen is released in certain regions of the body. It has to do with what is called Le Chatelier's principle. Imagine a crowded city in which the residents are little oxygen people. Because it is so crowded, these little oxygen people get onto a bus and travel to the wide open country where there is more room for them to work and live their lives. Iron 2 is the bus that transports the oxygen to this less populated region. I am sure that you have witnessed the differences in the color of your blood. The blood from a paper cut is bright red, but the blood that comes from your veins when you have blood drawn is a deep red or purple color. The blood moving towards your extremities, such as your finger, is oxygenated, whereas the blood returning from the body, that is, the blood in your veins, is deoxygenated. Now that was a lot of information, but if you take a step back, you will see that the color of our blood simply depends on the shape of a molecule and what energy of light it absorbs. Someday you will learn the complexities of this process, but for now, just worry about making sure your blood is never really blue.